Mhm. Hello and welcome to InnerSolutions, presented to you by Inner Professional. Thank you for making the time and space to join us today. I'm Christina Suzuma, your host for this event, and with me is our special guest, Ginny Whitelaw. She's a scientist, a Zen master, a leadership coach and trainer for international companies, founder and CEO of the Institute for Zen Leadership, and author of 4 books. Recently releasing her latest book, Resonate: Zen and the Way of Making a Difference. She's also about to release her first online program, Resonate. Hello, Jenny. Welcome.
Thank you, Christina. Good to be with you.
Thank you for honoring us in the community. It's lovely to have you here. And it's a very exciting time. Your question, how to challenge toward making a difference in your life or for those you influence. Wow, there was a slew of questions that came in for that.
Yeah, and thank you, those of you who sent in those questions. Really appreciate your interest. This is such a topic near and dear to my heart, as you'll hear. So I appreciate you joining me in the inquiry.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ginny. So I am going to step aside now and let you have the stage and just let me know when you're ready for the questions.
Well, what we thought might be useful is to just give you a little bit of intro into what the heck we're talking about. What is this resonate stuff? Um, to resonate is to vibrate with. Now, you might think, well, that doesn't describe my leadership or my work or whatever, but you'd be surprised because when you really look at it, that's what we're always doing. That's how our senses work. We vibrate with things. That's how you can hear my voice right now. It's vibrating the air molecules that then gets changed into a lot of other signals that eventually reach your ears. And once it gets in your ears, it vibrates in your body. And even the sense that you've already developed about like who I am as a person, that's energy that is causing some sense in you about how we might vibrate together. This vibration or resonance we sometimes talk about as like getting on the same wavelength with people or getting good vibes. That's more than metaphor. That is the actual physical experience. And I invite you into that experience because what resonates helps us do is be more intentional about how we take in energy, how we let it change us, and then how we enact or radiate back into the field what we have to offer. Because here's the truth of it, it's not a belief or an option. To resonate is a physical fact. I'm a physicist by training and a biophysicist in terms of understanding how energy works in the human body. And the way resonance works through you and me makes us the instrument that we resonate into the world. It's how we make our difference. So when we can start to master our resonance, we can have the effect we want to have, do what we're here to do. So how's that, Christina? Does that give us an opening for some questions?
Oh my goodness, that's a lovely opening. Thank you so much for the clarity, Ginny. So, as Ginny says, thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to submit your questions, and there are plenty. So we will cover as many as we can right now during this time we have with Ginny directly. And so, Ginny, the first one is about self-doubt, about holding myself back. And we've combined some of these questions together. So this one is self-doubt and holding myself back. How to worry less so I can contribute more.
It's a great question. And I will share with you how I have experienced this in my own body. That doubt and worry represent constrictions in us. I mean, as you even think about worry, there's a kind of agitation to it, right? A vibration. Or doubt, there's a kind of muddiness to it. These reflect tensions in our physical body. And the way we do less of that is, in a sense, to learn how to relax more. Now, that sounds so simple. It's easier said than done. But if for just a moment you were to clench your fists and get all tight and tight, you could feel how tension locks things in. Versus if you were to extend and be expansive, you imagine just the extensor side of your body just expanding, you can feel how big and radiant you could also become. Now, unconsciously, you and I are choosing some place in that spectrum moment by moment, unconsciously. And we can become more conscious of it as we feel into where is that inner tension? Where am I kind of stutter stepping or glitching in my action? And how can I relax through that? How can I stabilize through that? And so I can just bring something out clearly. It's a great pathway of training, a great pathway of practice. And in my own experience, what has really helped me in that regard, what has really been that pathway, is learning how to work with the breath and the body more deeply, because that's what can unlock that unconscious tension. To just try to unlock it consciously is tough because the conscious mind can't get access to it. But breath can be a great ambassador that crosses that boundary between conscious and unconscious mind to go more deeply. And so let's just try something together. What the heck? Just for a moment, try this little simple breathing exercise with me. I'm going to stand up and just hopefully stay on screen for you. But just notice what happens as you take in a breath and then let out a really slow exhale. Really slow. The exhale is the relaxing part of the breath cycle. So see how slow and long you can make it. Just try that again. I'm using my hands to guide the breath as if I could breathe like a piston. Breathe like a piston. Right down into the earth, right through my big toes back into the earth. Try that one more time. And settle down. It's in our language, isn't it? Settle down, calm down. Because this downward sense of being a little closer to the earth, a little more grounded, a little more stable, is part of what helps the body relax when we feel resourced by the earth itself. And in that grounding, in that relaxation, some of that worry and anxiety can drop away. And the more we practice with breath and body, the more we're going to be able to build up practices that let those things drop away. And it's sort of like cloud cover. When the worry clears and the anxiety clears, the sun is always shining. So it's more how to bring out your natural gift by clearing out the obstruction to letting that energy just flow through you and resonate clearly.
Oh, that's lovely. Let's let the sun shine out. Oh, lovely. Thank you, Ginny. The next question. How to maintain the balance between showing up in the ever-rushing corporate world and staying grounded with enough pause just to be.
Right. Oh, wow. And as the world picks up speed, our initial tendency is we speed up with it, right? It's like being on a treadmill that gets faster. And yet we realize at some point we can't do that. How do we create a different kind of rhythm or a pause? And what I've sure noticed in my life, I bet you've noticed in yours too, is that we have to give it to ourselves. We have to give it to ourselves because the world isn't going to give it to us, especially if we're really conscientious people or high need achievers. There's going to be more to do than we can do. So yet, if we give ourselves those pauses, those moments of practice where we come back to breath, do things like we just did, slow down the exhale, or take a few minute break here and break there to do some practice and grounding, then the way we come back into the rush is more stable. Because here's the truth of it. The world can operate at whatever frequency it does. and you can be your frequency. You can be your frequency. And oftentimes when you are the most stable frequency in the room, you can hold much more agitated, fast-moving vibrations and help them calm down. Imagine it like this. Stable low frequencies are like a big salad bowl. If they can hold a lot, versus high frequency, high vibrations are like tiny bowls. They're like little smaller, they're literally a shorter wavelength, right? Physically. So when you are stable and grounded, it's like you can hold a lot of fast moving stuff and it's still okay. But if you get all spun up, then you get pushed around by it. So it's especially when things speed up that I remind myself to slow my breath down, slow it down, feel that grounding. And in that, I'm going to be able to hold what's going on with much greater stability.
Lovely. Thank you, Ginny. And boy, do we need that breath during this time in the world today. So our next question, Ginny. How do we maintain positivity in these times without seeming like Pollyanna?
Yeah. I have to confess up front, I have sometimes been accused of sounding Pollyanna-ish because I'm kind of a positive person, I guess, by nature. And actually, when I think about it, I don't mind that. If somebody says you're being Pollyannish, I don't mind that. But I really appreciate the genuineness of this question, because there's a way that we kind of smear positivity on top of a bad situation that doesn't feel true, right? It doesn't feel like authentic, or it's like a veneer rather than real wood. And there's another way of being positive that is the kind of positivity that knows suffering, that's been there, that's been in the hole. And that kind of positivity is that like that, again, a big salad bowl. It can hold a lot. It's that kind of positivity that I think our world is so crying out for. And it's not everything is going to be all right. It's that we can meet each moment with the best within us. And truthfully, we learn from the difficulties even more than from the successes. We learn from our failures even more than when everything goes wonderfully well. The darkness of this time is teaching us much more about what it means to connect with one another, what it means to be whole and resourced. So there's something without a doubt that, in my more than 25 years of working with leaders, there's something about positivity in leadership that is just magnetic. It just makes us want to work with that person, because it's the kind of person who finds an opportunity amidst a problem. It's not that they say there is no problem. It's they say how to use this. How to use this. We in this COVID time, we've had to do so much more online, right? And yet the leaders who can say how to use this are finding opportunities in this time that are unprecedented. And that orientation, again, cannot be made up. It has to come out of who we are. But how do we get there? It's not far away. And these very practices that help us relax and let energy run through us generate their own kind of joy. In fact, when we can step out of the worry of ego and feel that sense of connectedness to what is, to being a part of the whole picture. The Greek word for it was ecstasis, the root of ecstasy. And it's a feeling of such joy that people long for that. In fact, there was a really nice book written a couple of years ago called Stealing Fire by Ginny Whitelaw and Stephen Kotler that talk about this ecstasis. It's the very fire people want to steal because it feels so good to feel that connected. So for me, the question of positivity is how can you remember your connection to what is, rather than the fear that sets in when I just feel like a corpuscular separate self. again, that remembering who we are becomes core to this. And that's why we really delve into things like Zen practices that help us experience that sense of connectedness, so that we don't just feel like a separate, isolated self trying to put a happy face on things, but we're feel whole in our part.
Lovely. Thank you, Ginny. I'd like to invite any of you who have joined us today that, as Jenny is sharing with us, you may have questions, you may have thoughts that come up or comments that come up. Please do share them in the chat. And if there are questions and we can't get to it, we will be posting them in our community. So I just wanted to leave that open invitation to all of you to continue the discussion of your thoughts and comments, because if we can get to it at the end of this, we shall definitely do that. So as we move on to our next question, how do I deal with a situation where the ways in which I want to make a difference isn't supported by those who could support me?
Yes, so many things we want to do require others to be able to support us. Thinking of it from a resonance point of view, we want to build resonance with others, get them on our wave. How do we do that? And one of the principles that I have found so helpful, that came actually from one of my Zen teachers, is based in this: become the other, go from there. Become the other. So what does that mean? When you're working with someone or talking with someone, how can you get on their wavelength? We often don't think about this because it passes beneath our conscious awareness most of the time. But when you're in conversation with someone, even watching me now, there are subtle gestures and reactions going on in your body as you make a map of me. And what happens in that is you start to get on some understanding, some visceral inward understanding of where I'm coming from. And the more you can do that, the more we'd be able to have a great conversation together. And then I could make a map of you. So now I carry you in me. The more we feel into this idea of become the other, the more we soften our boundaries. We become much more porous. And in becoming you, I feel into where you're coming from, what you're worried about, even the cadence of your speech, so I can match it. If I'm trying to bring you along, I can feel into what you care about, so I could show how my idea is in your interest, not just mine, but maybe even in our shared interest. So people move with us when they perceive it's in their interest. That's the truth about influence, when it's in their interest. So how can I show that to you? I can only show that to you if I could feel you and sense you, if I have that kind of empathy. And the good news is that is the most direct and up close application of resonance that we have, is how we are with one another. And when we are that way with one another, how we can build this dance together, so that you may have a different point of view than mine, but maybe we're going to find a higher level point where our interests intersect, and I can point toward that and get you moving with me. Or maybe you can show me how what you want to do is in my interest too, and I'll move with you. That's how influence works, and that's how we can feel into it using resonance.
Well, that's lovely, Ginny. It's almost like a dance.
It is a dance. Yeah, and you think about dance, that's catching the beat of something and moving with it. It's a perfect example of resonance.
Love this. Okay, the next question. How to stay firm and connected while there are so many negative forces wanting to get us out of the way? How to answer with love when you are invited to war in your own house?
Yeah, wow. War in the house, that's hard, isn't it? It's hard. And, in my own experience, it really speaks to, and this is how I've answered it for myself: how can I strengthen my signal? And both the signal that helps me stay grounded and the signal of love that I can radiate into the world. How can I strengthen that? because that again is an application of resonance. What I have found in my own Zen training, for example, is that, and I've trained in Zen for decades now, but in training in Zen, I'm using the breath and the body and posture. I'm sitting still. I'm letting this breath drop into my body. And in that, I'm getting to know how my own mind works. I'm getting to stabilize my condition using that breath, which, remember, I said crosses that boundary into unconscious mind. The body's learning to relax. And the more intensely I've trained, the broader conditions I can handle. I'll say that again. The deeper I train, the wider of upset or difficult conditions in the world I can absorb. So it's, again, a little bit like being a great big bowl. You can hold a lot if you can be really stable and resource yourself with the earth and the forces around you. And if you feel isolated and running on battery power, it's sort of like, how much of this can I take before I just run out? That's what happens. So when situations are difficult, the question I ask myself is, how can I go deeper? When somebody has riled me, I ask, how can I calm my breath down even more? Because I can't change other people directly by saying, you should change. I've never found that to work. After 25 years of coaching, we don't change other people by telling them how to live their lives. But by changing my own condition, I change the field around me. And this is not woo-woo. This is now stuff that we can put out, magnetometers and measure the electromagnetic field around a human being. When my emotional state is positive, this field is stronger. That's measurable. Same with you. When you are in a solid, stable state, you can radiate a much more stable, strong, coherent signal to others rather than a jangle, right? And when you are stable and coherent, you think it helps other people settle down? It's certainly been my experience that it helps. We can't fix things according to our agenda, just like this, because everything changes according to its nature, not according to Ginny's agenda or your agenda. And not everything can change all at once, because sometimes people, especially when they're acting in a warlike way, are acting out of deep trauma and hurt, out of deep pain that maybe is a deep and old story that they just can't get beyond. And yet, the safer the space I hold with someone, the deeper they dig. That's been a truth I've seen in coaching again and again and again. If someone's kind of skirting the level of an issue, I know I have to listen more deeply. And what is listening? It's tuning my antenna to hear you more clearly, more deeply, to feel you in every pore of my skin. When I do that, people get more honest. They get wiser. They dig deeper. So that's the part I get control over, is how deeply I connect with someone. And then whatever they can change will change. And if it's not ready to change today, it won't. But I have to accept that too.
Very nice. That listening. Okay, the next question. I've tried to help people that don't want to be helped. How can I figure out what's helpful and what's not?
It's great, and it goes right to that word listening. When I was younger, I used to think the important part of the communication process was speaking. Like when you learned about communication, you thought, well, leadership, that's about giving a good talk, a town hall and my message. What I've since learned is it's the listening side of leadership, the listening side of coaching, the listening side of a family conversation. That's where you're taking in energy, literally, physically taking in energy. And when somebody feels heard, well, think about yourself. How do you feel when somebody's listening to you with everything they've got? It could take away a lot of defensiveness. Our defenses start to crumble when we feel so deeply regarded that somebody is listening to us. So the deep listening is what tends to help people open up. And it's also what gives us the most clue or the most cue about how to help. And that said, I also want to say a caution that I've had to learn in my own life, because even from my childhood, I was always trying to fix things, and maybe you identify with that, but, there'd be a problem and I wanted to fix it. And I got a lot of emotional satisfaction out of being the fixer. And a lot of people, go into leadership and they have that same orientation. I'm only worthwhile if I'm fixing a problem, or I'm fixing this relationship, or if I'm fixing this person. Coaches sometimes struggle with this. Family members, parents struggle with this. I have to fix my kid. part of what I would just have had to learn myself is it's not broken. It's not broken. What I have to see is how to hold the space where, again, that light can come through again. The light can shine through. So it's where do I have to access in myself that gives a chance for connection, for healing to happen? How can I listen more deeply? How can I hold this person, this conversation in the spirit of love, that whatever is ready to open can open? So I've quit trying to fix other people. I don't do that. What I will do is hold a space with them where whatever they're ready to explore has a chance for that wisdom to come out.
That's lovely. That's something I definitely struggled with all my life. So the next question, Ginny. Balancing my self-interest and that of the community in deciding whether to take the COVID-19 vaccine.
Wow. Personally, I can't wait to take it. So I have to say, I'm waiting for that little message to come in that says I can sign up for it. But I appreciate the question, because it also gives us a chance to think about resonance on even this larger social scale, because resonance applies at every level, from the tiniest molecule up through, catalyzing social change and big effects. And what we see even in this global pandemic of the coronavirus is, here is a little virus, a slip of something that's not even, we wouldn't say alive. It's like, a little piece of genetic code in a protein wrap, that can resonate, in other words, vibrate with our human cells. And it can knock on the door of our human cells in a way that we say, come on in. Then it makes a gazillion copies of itself. Because it can resonate with all of us, it can spread wildly. And my goodness, it has. So this is an example of resonance. Now, our response is also an example of resonance, but it has been up to this point kind of resonance interrupted. Why is it resonance interrupted? Because you can see in our social setting, in our society, and here I'm speaking to what I've seen in the United States. You can judge if you're in another country how much this has been true for you. But in my country, the response to COVID has been steeply divided. It's been politicized. So one side is wearing masks and keeping distance, and another side is saying, well, I think this actually could be a hoax, or it could be like, we don't need this, or I'm not afraid of any COVID. It's almost like, I want freedom not to wear a mask. There's been a friction. So when you cut resonance down the middle, it deadens the response. The virus doesn't care. It doesn't care which side we're on. So the virus becomes stronger than the response. That's what we've been seeing. That's why more than 420,000 people are dead. And that's why this country has responded worse than any other on this planet, because we deadened our resonance in responding to a virus. So what I would look at, when I have an opportunity to get vaccinated, I feel that anything that any of us can do to come together around this is going to be really important. We have to be stronger than the virus. And if the virus can get every one of us, we have to be as one.
Oh, thank you, Ginny. Moving on. Recently retired and in the process of moving to a new community. I'm not one to just sit around. I would like to find activities that prove meaning and make a difference. Question is, how to begin?
Well, I love this question and the good heart that it comes from. Let me say first how not to begin. Don't begin by jumping into action. That's what I tell myself, because that's my go-to response. I'm a person of action. So I look for, what can I do? What can I do? But this is what I've learned from resonance and from really feeling into this. And I invite you to feel into it as well. Listen. Listen first. Get curious. Talk to people. What does the community need? What need is going unmet? Who's hungry? Who's struggling? And feel into what causes resonance in you. Because here's the truth of it. We can get a lot of different inputs. There's a lot of different potential. But the way resonance works and the way we can make our greatest difference is when we are in natural vibration with the forces around us, with the energy available. And what comes through you, what comes through me, and starts stirring us is going to be very specific. That's another principle of resonance, is that it's highly specific. So each individual instrument, and we're all a little bit different kind of instrument, is going to resonate with conditions differently. So in the listening, you're listening for what stirs me. Not just what stirs me today, but what won't let go, because that's when you really know this is mine to act on. So a deep kind of listening, talking to people, being curious and open. So let the energy come in and then see what matches me, what matches my skill set, my gifts, my interests, my passion, my availability to help. And something will start to, like a hologram coming into focus, something will start to come into focus for you. Listen first and let that resonance change you, then let that inform action.
Thank you, Ginny. And I do believe we have some time for a few more. How can I make an impact to help making the world a better place?
Isn't that what we want to do? Help this world. You know, this is such a crucial, pressing time where so many wicked issues have been pushed up to the surface and are happening simultaneously, right? How do we make it better? And in a way, I feel the answer that comes through me is similar to what I was just saying. I find it useful to listen. And in fact, you've heard me mention meditation a couple times now, but that's one of my main listening posts. In meditation, I get very quiet and I'm just breathing. And I just sit with the day, you know, in sitting meditation. I'm just counting my breath and I'm just feeling into anything that wants to be heard. It may sound funny, but I bet if you did the same thing, you'd have a similar experience to me, that it doesn't take long before certain ideas sort of pop up. In fact, the ideas for the books that I've written, the outline, so much of it has come from the cushion. That's what happens, that when you listen, life lets you know. And sometimes, again, there's more ideas than we can possibly act on. But some ideas don't let go because they are yours. They are mine. They are ours to act on. And so the things that really light us up when we listen can become the things where we can make our greatest contribution. If our intent is to serve the whole picture, and if we can stay connected to the whole picture, then the actions we pour into that picture make the world a better place. Cannot help it. It's where we get off track is when we get locked into our own thinking, which could be kind of neurotic or from the past or trying to prove itself or getting locked up in some need of the ego, which is operating in a sense on battery power, is how I described it earlier. Then we can get out of sync and we throw things into the world and they may clunk. They don't resonate. But if we are catching the beat of the song, so to speak, we've caught the wave, something comes through us, and then we put it into the world again in this way that matches conditions, becoming other people to influence them, becoming the situation to feed into it. When we match the conditions, it can be as natural as swinging on a swing set, making our difference, swinging on a swing set, adding our energy at the right moment. And it can be as resilient. And in the Taoist terms, it's sometimes called Wu Wei, effortless effort. The effortless effort that comes through us when we get out of our own way. And that sense of connection, vibrating with exactly the differentiated instrument you are, comes out in your actions that not only make the world a better place, but become your most significant life, your reason for being here. That's available to us. That's available to you.
Thank you, Ginny. And I believe we have time for one more here. My challenge right now is how to continue to build partnerships in my local community to effect lasting social change and address racial, economic inequalities that limit educational opportunities for my students.
Yes, we're seeing so much of this racial inequity coming up. I mean, that's another thing COVID has highlighted, that this past year has highlighted, of inequalities of treatment, inequalities in healthcare, inequalities in the criminal justice system, inequalities with policing, inequalities in education, as you point out. When we want to work on big change like that, that's working with big forces, that big social change. There's a lot of collective, I'll say karma, or collective institutional force behind those changes. And those don't change overnight, but they do change. And the way they change is as we can feel into and listen for some movable parts within that system and work with some larger forces. So again, it calls on us to be very sensitive, to be open to interactions with others, to listening to others, and to acting in ways that are true to what we want, the system we want to build. Acting in ways that are true to what we want to create. And it's a way it can feel for a long time like we're pushing on an impenetrable wall. You know, I think about the Berlin Wall in this regard and how long, it was built in 1961. And for so long, it was a place of death and destruction and impenetrable to people. And yet a built-up pressure was growing in the society, East and West, that was saying this doesn't stand. And then seemingly all at once, boom, in 1989, it comes down. But it wasn't all at once. It was the pressure built from people like you and me saying, this won't stand. It may not fall today because, again, everything changes according to its schedule, not according to mine. But if I keep applying pressure into the system, eventually it collapses like a house of cards. Those phase shifts, those tipping points of large-scale social change cannot be predicted, but they happen through the application of energy, your energy, toward the system you want to build. Keep being what you want to see in the world, and it applies a pressure in the systems that don't hold that currently. And then create some ways for our efforts to add up, which is one of the crucial parts of creating social change, to get efforts to add up, and eventually the system has to adjust. Eventually we reach a tipping point. But this is work that takes patience and resilience. I don't want to underestimate that or understate it. It takes patience and resilience. So very important to stay plugged in. Don't exhaust yourself.
Well, thank you, Ginny. I believe that we might have time for just one more here. Let's see. to achieve commitment and identification with a project or an idea.
Yeah, how do I get committed to an idea? It's going to go back to that sense of listening and listening for resonance in myself. That if I just manufacture commitment, like I'm supposed to be committed to this idea, it won't hold up under stress, right? But if I can build an interior, I'll say resonance with that idea, if I let it change me, because oftentimes when an idea first hits us, it doesn't match our life as we know it. This is one of the things I teach about, we work on a lot in Zen Leadership, because when a leader is often one who can sense a future ready to happen, but it isn't here yet. If it was already here, it wouldn't need work, right? And if it already matched me as a leader, it would already be here. So when an idea first hits, like an idea to write a book, like Resonate, initially it runs into some obstacle in me. Well, I don't have time. I think it's a lot of work. A lot of things get put on the back burner. I was busy before. All that resistance comes up. Do I listen to the resistance or do I listen to the idea? How committed am I going to be to this project? If I make the commitment that and this is the commitment I've made, if it's mine, I will do it. And now what that requires is me to discern what's mine. And again, that comes out of, for me, listening deeply, meditation practice, and things that help me sense an idea that won't let me go. It's not all that subtle. It just won't let me go. And then those ideas, I have to adjust my own habits to match. Because, I have to change my priorities, for example, because this particular, say if I'll use the book example, I'm going to have to shift around how I spend my mornings because that's prime writing time. I'm going to have to ask some different things of my team because I'm not going to be as present for certain things as I was before I started, lopping off all this time for writing. So you have to adjust the priorities that start to change this system, changes my calendar, changes how I run my day. But in that process, I'm adjusting to the idea. So my commitment is becoming embodied. And when a commitment becomes embodied, now my actions are going to express it. The walk and the talk match. So that's the process of going from, oh, great idea, to now I'm living and walking and breathing this idea. It's coming through me. That embodiment of it is the real commitment that lets it resonate completely through you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ginny, for your wonderful insights, and it's spectacular. Ginny, that was the last question that we can take. Is there anything that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I have a passion for this area for sure, and it's not a passion I like to keep quiet about. So if there's any of this that resonates with you, practices that help you integrate, tune, and tame this instrument will help you lead into this most significant life. And if that resonates with you, certainly this course and this book are opportunities to dive deeper into it and make it your own. I would hope that for you. I would wish that for you.
Thank you so much, Ginny. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining us. Now, we do know that we didn't get to all of the questions and the ones that are also posted in chat here. We will be putting them in our private community. And we call it a private community because you do have to register for it. It is free. And the reason why we make it private and that you need to register is so that we can keep that community safe. As we know in the world today, that's what we do our best is to keep the community safe from any outsiders that might want to create havoc. So we welcome you and invite you to do that during the community. And again, we are very excited to also announce Ginny's new up-and-coming program here on Interprofessional. And the program is called Resonate. And it will officially launch on February 22nd. 2021, so this coming month. And for all of you who have joined us on this webcast, thank you so much. We are offering you a special coupon for the savings of $100, and this will be valid through February. And the coupon code is CHANGE. Change. So again, we'd like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making the time and the space. And we hope that you all keep safe and be well and find your balance and resonate in this world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ginny.
Thank you.